Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo and Going Bold Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. My name is Tina Huggins, and this is Joe Huggins.
Hello.
And we have a great guest with us today. I'm super excited. We've been trying to get Annette Chesney on here for a long time. So between her being sick and me being sick, and then our times in between. So finally, after all this time, we are graced with Annette Chesney. So a little bit about Annette. She is an expert in narcissistic abuse recovery and creator of the Cinderella No More coaching program that helps Christian businesswomen grow beyond stumbling blocks of past narcissistic abuse to achieve their most desired personal and professional goals. So welcome, Annette. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so glad we were finally able to work it out.
Finally, after all this time. And I'm super excited about sharing the Narc spectrum with everybody. And so we're going to get that explained. But before we start, we were talking about this just before the show came on. So I want you to go and explain how this Narc spectrum and what they're getting ready to learn is not a professional tool.
Right. It's definitely not. I do have background in the counseling field and everything, but I'm a coach, and as I was working with women and going through so much on my own, just for years and years of my adult life and more than one narcissistic relationship in different settings, how, they just kind of like come out of the woodwork or whatever. And, as I was talking with people, I was hearing patterns and I was trying to, help them understand some things, like what motivates a narcissist. And if you say the word narcissist, what does that really mean? How do you know what is or isn't a narcissist? And I realized that as we're dealing with narcissists, it's really on a spectrum. And you don't hear anyone talking about this so much, and the motivations and what to expect are different in each category as you move up the spectrum. So I created this just for a layperson's understanding, to wrap their head around what's going on. It answers a lot of questions. It's also really affirming when we walk through this. I've done classes and stuff in this, live. I just created an on-demand class that people can walk themselves through. And it's amazing to me how light bulbs go off for people who have been out of a relationship sometimes for years. And you have those like lingering questions and the like, what ifs, and maybe I should have, or whatever, and this kind of dispels a lot of that and really affirms that, your understanding, your gut was right on a lot of things. And so it's not a clinical tool. This is not like a peer-reviewed, research-based thing. This is what I came up with to help the average person understand this whole complex constellation of behaviors and things that you come up against. And, so it's been such a help for people when they see this. And even just looking at the one slide that you're going to show without even going into all the detail we can, that right there makes light bulbs of understanding go off. I've had, I know a number of clinicians that I've actually shown this to them and walked through it. And they go, wow, I have never seen it laid out like this, but it makes so much sense. And they want to use it with their clients, just because it helps you get it. So there's a long-winded answer to it.
We'll share that in just a second. But I know I looked over that when I first met you, and I was like, oh my gosh, it helped me to understand where my first husband fit. And then I did date a narcissist in the group, and in the group of guys that I dated, because I dated several before I got to meet my Mr. Charming. And The idea of what the spectrum showed me was a light bulb for me. It helped me to be able to say that I was in an abusive relationship.
Huh?
Because for the longest time, even back when we started the show back in January, I still couldn't quite say that. And I have been divorced for 21 years, this, the 30th of June. So it will be 21 years this year. And so being able to, and I'm writing a book on abuse, so that story came up. And so some of that information that I got, the light bulb from your Narc spectrum, helped me to be able to put this in perspective to write this book. So
Oh, that's so great. I'm glad that was a help. Yeah.
huge help, huge help. Well, let's share this.
Mhm.
So I don't know how this will show up in, so we got that there. So I don't know how it shows up when we're doing our filming. So,
Mhm.
oops, let's not do it that way. There we go. So I'll let you go ahead and explain this to us.
Sure. Now this is, you can see it says it's the snapshot of the Narc encounter spectrum. And it is a spectrum, meaning it moves up. So you can see how the arrow goes to the right. And that indicates as it moves up the line, it gets more destructive with everything. So, and then you see the vertical dotted lines, how they get progressively darker. That separates the categories, and that indicates some key crossovers that you need to pay strong attention to. So I've got 10 different types of narcissists listed there, and that's not as much important as it is the information below the line, because that's what's going on behind the scenes and everything. And I list these as categories going from left to right. And I'm here in Florida. In Florida, we have hurricanes. And so everyone understands that the higher the category number, the more destructive the hurricane. So kind of like this here too. We've got categories 1 through 4. Now in category 1, that's just us. That's regular people. And we as regular people can be selfish, we can be arrogant, we can have insecurities, we have times where we're thoughtless. And by the way, I'm a Christian, so I reference things from that frame of reference. But for those of you who are listening who are not, don't worry, just cherry pick what works for you and what makes sense. So this is kind of, you see I've got it noted there, the sinful nature that we're all born into. And nobody has to tell a child to be selfish. We have to train them not to be selfish, to share and everything. So this is just like normal people stuff, the stuff we all struggle with. As we get older, we mature, our character grows. Hopefully we struggle with this less, but just because you're dealing with someone who's dysfunctional and they can act like a jerk, that doesn't mean they're a narcissist. There's not a narcissist under every bush. Once you get into this world, it starts to seem that way. But the reason it seems that way is because studies are showing, and some are showing higher than this, but like the average that I saw of studies was about 1 in like every 60 or so were narcissists, and could be actually diagnosed as a narcissist.
Right.
And so, that's a lot. And it leaves a lot of wake, a lot of destructive wake relationally with that. So, one of these key things here, if you're wondering if you're dealing with someone who really is a narcissist, or are they just an immature jerk, or are they having a bad day? Because let's face it, we can all be like that from time to time. So down below the line, these are the key things you want to note. Okay. For someone who's a regular person, they feel bad when they realize they've been hurtful. They can self-reflect. Like all of us will stop and think about things we've said or done. And if someone comes to us and says, that really hurt me, and let's talk about this situation, we might feel a little offended or a little defensive, especially depending on how we grew up and how failure or mistakes were handled. But generally speaking, we will self-reflect, and we do have a desire to improve and get better. And when we realize we've been hurtful, we are genuinely remorseful, and we want to do something about it. We want to change. We don't want to do that again, you know. Not so much with a narcissist. So that leads us, that's category one. That's us, regular people. When you cross that first dotted line, you're moving into the constellation of that first category, category two of narcissism. And you can see I've got a few listed up top here: the pitiful narc, the drama queen narc, the man-child narc, prince charming narc, and the covert narc. A lot of overlap between these. Again, don't get too hung up on like trying to find like an exact label. Just kind of look at the constellation of things that are going on there. And the thing with a category two narcissist, they're destructive, but it's not necessarily in a calculated way. You know, they're not sadistic in what they're doing. And what's going on behind the surface with them is they're just kind of empty inside. Their emotional development, their self-concept was arrested at a very young age. And because of that emptiness, they take cues from what is going on around them, how well they perform at any moment, and what other people think and say about them. So everything hangs, if they feel they're okay or special in the moment, depends on what you say about them, which is why when you're in a relationship with them, they're so demanding. You can like pour out and try to fill their bucket. 24 hours later, they're in a like, what have you done for me lately kind of mode. And you're like, wait a minute, I just spent all this time focused on what you wanted, and now I have some things. And that doesn't compute to them. They don't understand that. You know, so they can only see things through the lens of what they need. So you're dealing with an emotional child on the inside, which is why you see a lot of like tantruming behavior. And people, you know, I've talked with women and it's just so funny. And there are female narcissists, don't get me wrong, absolutely female narcissists. It just sort of seems like the stats show there are more men for whatever reason. Female narcissists in some ways are scarier than some of the male narcissists, you know, but you are dealing with an emotional child, and it can be really puzzling because they can seem like a grown-up at times, but then when something triggers them, something doesn't go their way, if you come to them saying, hey, I needed to talk with you about this because I wasn't comfortable with this or whatever, and that's when, oh, you know, it all kind of blows up and they're defensive and they're lashing out, and they'll be manipulative, but it's only because on the inside, that's a survival mechanism for them. You know, they're not manipulative like we'll talk about in these higher categories. They're just trying to survive. And you can kind of have some pity and a degree of compassion, maybe, you know, I mean, you get really fed up after a while and you're done, you know, but in moments when you're calm and centered and talking with God, you know, you can have a moment of compassion toward the category two because they're miserable. They're completely miserable on the inside. And if they're having a good day, it's only because everything's going just right. And someone is lavishing attention and appreciation, affection, whatever they feel they need in the moment, it's there. But how sad to be so fragile that how you see yourself is contingent on what everyone else is doing for you. You know, so it's really kind of a sad place to be. And what people don't understand is when they get to that place where they've actually crossed this line, and you're pretty sure they've crossed this line, it doesn't change. You know, you can't pray harder. You can't do, you know, all these things. You cannot get through to them. You know, it doesn't change. They may try to change if they're in fear of losing you, not because they're deeply in love with you or anything, but more of they're afraid to be alone. You know, so they might try to change a little bit, but they're just white knuckling it. It's not an authentic change, and it doesn't come from a desire to change. So you just get this loop of behavior over and over again. They might try to love bomb you again for a while or whatever, but you're just spinning in a circle. And by the way, I always tell people when they're trying to figure out is this actually a narcissist or not? Hey, Tina, we just lost our,
Oh, that was me. There we go. I dropped my mouse, so it's
Oh.
like it did something.
Well, the mouse has a mind of its own, apparently.
It has a mind of its own. There we go.
Yeah. So, okay. So, so here's the thing I always share with people too. You'll rarely get like an official diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder.
So
And
true.
you don't want to go around labeling people because, that can get you in, heap big trouble.
Especially in court and divorce aspect.
Yes, absolutely. But you need to know certain things because that changes your perspective, your decisions moving forward, and boundaries you put in place and how you protect yourself. So what I always tell people is to think of it like this. If you take the 10,000-foot view, don't look at each incident in isolation because you'll always be given what sounds like a plausible excuse. And you being a good and reasonable person, you'll try to give the benefit of the doubt. You need to take the 10,000-foot view and look at the pattern. Is this always what happens? Is this, like try to step back and be objective about this and then use the duck theory. And the duck theory is if it looks like a duck and it waddles like a duck and it quacks like a duck all the time, just might be a duck. And that's good enough. You can just kind of go on that presumption, in terms of how you proceed with things. Make sense?
Yes, totally sense. So I can tell you just before we go on through all this, when this is where my ex-husband fit. He's not a narcissist. He just fits on this spectrum where he goes from the 1 to the 2 and he kind of bounces back in there. And our abuse, I mean, I ended up with broken bones and separated bones and dislocated bones and those were what is called situational abuse. And those happen. And this is where a lot of clients come to me and they'll always say, my spouse is a narcissist. My wife is a narcissist. My husband's a narcissist. And once I get into working with them, I realize they're not really a narcissist. Why? Because I got lucky enough to see the spectrum. And although I know that naturally, but on the spectrum, it helps me to see what is going on with the individual that pops, and I can say that I would bounce from 1 to 2 in my 20s and 30s for sure. Being a young mom, I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. So I wanted to, get attention or whatever I was doing at the time. So,
right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So ready for the next category?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this dotted vertical line is a crucial one. When this line gets crossed, things change. I mean, this category 2, it's bad enough. I mean, maybe if you have a lot of skills, you have a real strong support system, you've got a coach or a therapist in your corner, you've worked really hard on you, and you start to realize, this is never going to be a reciprocal, healthy relationship. But for whatever reason, you feel like you cannot detach completely from the relationship, you can maybe manage it, as long as you understand certain things about it. It's still destructive, even though they don't mean to be. It's still hurtful. It can still drain the life out of you dealing with it. You can only just keep pouring in someone's bucket just so long, so whether it's a spouse or a boss or maybe a parent, maybe it's a parent, you don't feel comfortable cutting them off. If you know this, then you know what pieces to put in place. You can get a coach to come alongside you to help you like debrief after you've had encounters and get your head screwed on straight, because like they can do nutty things, and make you nutty as well. But again, as we cross over now, the game changes at this point, because now they go from that category 2 where it's not premeditated, it's not calculated. It is when we go up to this next category. They know exactly what they're doing. You see, we've got the authority narc, the power trip narc, and the vengeful narc. Again, some overlap. But this starts to get bad when you hit this category. They are deliberately demeaning and devaluing towards you. They want to tear your self-concept apart. They want to skew the way you see yourself, which then, splashes all over everything you do in life. And this is where I would get women who, they were small business owners and they were really struggling. There was this war going on inside of them. They would want to go after certain goals, but then they found themselves self-sabotaging. And they came to me and we'd start unpacking stuff. They didn't know there was a narcissist in their background somewhere. And as we started unpacking what was going on, and I just, I would ask certain questions. And sure enough, there was a narcissist, or very likely a narcissist in there. And here years later, without figuring out what was the name of that Mack truck that hit them, they're still carrying it as if I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Why can't, and there's really, other than a broken heart and some hurt and, you're the walking wounded, and we can all change and grow. I mean, don't get me wrong. We all need to improve. I mean, to the day we die and we see the Lord face to face, there's room for improvement in each of us. But genuinely speaking, she's a good person. And as a matter of fact, people who have been victims of narcissistic abuse, and I'm sure you can relate with this, Tina, in the work you do, they're some of the most amazing people you ever want to meet. Just kind and generous,
The
thoughtful.
victims are, yes.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what I said. He is a great, and these people, you're right. They are the best people you'll ever come in contact with, because they have got more heart and they feel for you. They have more compassion, and that makes them the perfect target for a narcissist, just like Joe.
Yep.
Exactly.
Like
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. I was targeted multiple times throughout my life before I realized what I was dealing with. Even though I had that counseling background and I was leading recovery support group ministries, large ones, for years, I just, it's different when it hits you, because we as good people, we want to give the benefit of the doubt. We're going to hang in there. We're going to see this through. We're going to try to make improvements. I'm not a quitter. We're going to work this out. But there is no working it out, especially when you hit this category 3 and up, because they are taking your wonderful qualities and weaponizing them against you. When you sit down to have a conversation to try to resolve some conflict or misunderstanding or whatever, like you would with a normal person, right, you can make progress with that. When you're dealing with a category 3 narcissist, you sit down and do that, you're just arming them with more information about how to get under your skin, how to hurt you. A narcissist like this, if you manage to drag them into a marriage counselor's office, not unusual that they can flip the counselor against you and align the counselor, with them, somehow manage to paint themselves as the victim while you're being abused, emotionally, verbally.
She had one counselor in that whole thing.
Which one?
The one that she did get turned against you.
Well, none of them were against me, but there was one that never figured her out. And I had 17 years of counseling. And because, like what you're saying, you have no resolution there, right, you can't resolve anything.
No.
And so she would handpick the counselor, and we went through like 13 counselors. And what she wanted is them to fix me. That's how she saw me. We need to fix Joe, So they'd get in there, and then we'd start. Well, she'd go in 2 or 3 months on her own, and
priming the pump, huh?
Oh man, big time. And then I'd walk in, and then they'd be like a couple sessions and that kind of stuff. And then they'd be like, Joe, can we see you by yourself? And I like, sure, you bet. Well, and I've told this story many times, but the counselor would go, before you came in, she had you painted as 6'2", which I'm definitely not. and every time she would open her mouth, you'd backhand her. That's how you were portrayed. And then just being me in counseling, going through, being honest and everything, they're like, and then they'd confide in me, and then, so then she'd pick up on this counseling that they're not going to attack me and beat me up and that kind of stuff. So after a while, she'd just move on and get another counselor, do the same. In over 17 years, that's my story of 17 years of counseling. And yes, I'm not a quitter. And I have 6 kids. They're wonderful kids. So that was my main focus, is to get those kids raised, because if I would have left the nest, she would have controlled the courts to go, he's the bad guy. He did this. She would have set me up so bad. And she did have a way with my 2 youngest daughters, because I couldn't stay in the marriage, because she was calling the cops and they were showing up to, probably arrest me, but
that's
somehow they believed me and they never arrested me. 3 accounts on police. So I've been through a lot with that. And even all of her handpicked counselors, one in particular, figured her out to the T. And he goes, Joe, let me describe a couple things and you let me know if this sounds like your wife. And he was describing what you are right now. And he had all this description, and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, no, wait, she doesn't have to be all of them. And I go,
if it was the DSM, 5 out of 9.
Yeah, she was like 8 out of 9, and the 9th was unfaithful. And I go, why? I don't think she's been unfaithful. And he goes, no, it doesn't have all to do with sex or anything. She left her post. That's unfaithful. And I never looked at it that way. And I was like, wow, she did leave her post. Everything was attacking me, belittling me in front of the kids, in front of other people, about my genetics, about my family's genetics, about how superior her family was. I mean, it just went on and on. So all about that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what you mentioned, that is so important too, and I kind of said it in passing, but you picked up on it, and I'm glad you did, that this category 3 narcissist, you will never resolve things with them. You can spend the rest of your life spinning in the same circle and making you sick inside. I mean, that's what happens. It tears you apart having to do this. It's exhausting and it's so draining. And if you don't understand what you're dealing with, then everything about you gets like someone puts a finger in their brain and spins it around, and you just like lose sight of who you are. And you just become this shell of yourself in many ways. I think we lost the.
There it is.
My mouse is down on the bottom and it put up something else on our end. And I'm like, oh, I have to kind of get rid of it. So yeah. And one of the things that I get when you cross over. So we were talking about this week about how, there are lots of people that can be classified narcissists, some of them that can be diagnosed narcissists, but there are some that are born with mental disorders, mental dysfunctions that can fit into the narcissist bucket, but that aren't narcissism, like antisocial personality syndrome. They don't get along with other people, so they always cause fights. I have a client that's dealing with just that. Their spouse has got into a fight with somebody they had run into a wall and blamed them that their wall hurt their car, kind of thing. And it's like, these are the types of people that just can't get along with anybody.
Right.
And I know with his ex, I do believe there's a little bit more to it than narcissism. And that's something that's like where you're getting ready to take us, where they can't, because those of us who can be narcissistic, where you were talking about category 1, which is normal. I mean, we can throw little temper tantrums when we're going through whatever, but like you said, we always want to fix ourselves. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And I remember in my 30s, when I realized I was doing some of these things, I tried very hard to
Right.
learn how to fix that.
Uh-huh.
Very.
And that's a very important distinguishing marker between someone that you could possibly remain in relationship and work through something versus there isn't a lot of hope for any sort of change. So stop beating your head against a wall kind of stuff, or at least put some protections in place for your own heart. You know, stop going to the Coke machine, putting in quarters, hoping you're going to get a Coke when all you get is a Pepsi. You know, that's not going to change with this. So when you're dealing with this category 3 narc, like I said, they're deliberately demeaning and devaluing. They want to tear you down. You're going to get the gaslighting. You're going to get all the tactics, all the schemes. You know, they're going to do everything to keep you off balance, including sometimes being nice, sometimes being helpful, because then you let your guard down and then they whammo you once again. You know, it's they're trying to keep you off center so you can't figure it out because you're more easily controlled when you don't have a good handle on things. And they are driven to feel superior, very much so. And here's the thing too that they'll do. They have this sort of script in their head of the role you're supposed to play. You know, you're just a puppet in their life. You're a resource to be used in one form or another. And same with any kids that you have with a narcissist. They're just resources to be used. And so if you don't play along with the script that they feel you should do, if you don't say and act and behave, or if you dare to have needs of your own, if you have a different opinion, whatever it is, you know, then automatically in their mind, they feel justified in punishing you for daring to think differently or be differently from what they want from you. You know, so it's,
oh my gosh, when you're talking, I'm thinking of all these things, and she was big on authority, which means she's in control. She is a control freak about everything. And if she doesn't get the red carpet invite and she's superior, she's not going. You know, she's had to make the wedding cake for 2 of my kids' weddings. She wants to be the spectacular wedding cake maker. So she's on display for this wedding cake. And then come to find out in the reception, not many people were allowed to eat it. You know, it sat on her table. And so it was like this trophy on her table and hardly anybody got to eat it. And it's like, I hope you enjoy your trophy. You know, it's just that, yeah, it fits it to the T.
Yeah. And when you know what you're dealing with, you know, if you have to have interactions with someone, like I'll give you a for instance, this is just a small thing. So where I live, there's a homeowners association, and there's a woman who is the president of it. And she has managed to turn the community in her own private kingdom, you know, and the property manager that I deal with, this poor woman, she's a sweetheart, and she's just been ripping her hair out because it's just been so difficult to deal with this homeowners association president. Like the property management company had to at one point actually bring their attorney in to try to reason with this woman so she would at least give a courtesy notice before just going fine on, you know, various tenants that this property manager was dealing with. Silly little things like their kids used some sidewalk chalk, fining them for that. They didn't bring their garbage can in by, you know, 5 p.m. that evening. Fine them for that. On Christmas Eve, she was having conniptions about this. And I hadn't had any run-ins with her except this one situation. And I started going, I'm seeing some duck-like qualities here, you know? And I was able to talk to the property manager. And I'm watching an interaction where I was included, like in the text messages and the emails and back and forth. And I texted the property manager and said, I think we might be dealing with this. It's very possible. And so that changes the game here. And I just got an email from her today on this one silly little thing that she needs me to re-register my car in a new system, but is insisting that I show up at her house to receive the passcode, you know. And I emailed back very politely and said, I'm not understanding. Can you give me a legitimate reason why I need to physically come to your home to receive a passcode for something that's digital. And then well, everyone else did it. And I said, just because everyone else does it doesn't mean that's a legitimate reason. I think it's inappropriate to expect me to come to your house. I'm not comfortable with it. Please email me the passcode, just like you emailed me the passcode to the pool. We were back and forth, and I was telling my daughter about this, and she was laughing, because that's a good thing. When kids get older and they can understand this kind of stuff, they're armed and protected from experiencing this themselves in the future. Excuse me. So, I mean, that's just like one little tiny thing that was just laughable. But knowing that I might be dealing with a narcissist, I included in the bottom, I knew she needed a little bit of supply, and maybe I could like disarm her a little bit so she'd be more cooperative. So I tossed in there, by the way, I neglected to thank you in my busyness for sending the pool code. I really appreciated that you did that. And because I knew what I was dealing with, I didn't get like, oh, I can't bring myself to, say thank you to her. I was just like, yeah, she needs a little nugget of supply. Let me throw her a little nugget, and maybe that'll tone her down. And then maybe she'll be cooperative, So stuff like this, understanding this is helpful for just the little things in life when you're dealing with people like that. But yeah, it's challenging, but it's helpful to know it's not you.
So let's move on to the last one where everybody needs to know this stuff.
Yeah, this is so important, because there's a dangerous line that gets crossed with this. Now, I've split this up into the sociopath narc and the psychopath narc. Okay, now neither one of those, again, are clinical words. You won't find those words in the DSM. But here's the way I've sort of splitting hairs in some respects, but an important differentiating thing. So a sociopathic narc, they are cold and calculating. And like I've noted here, there isn't empathy. They have no problem dehumanizing you. It might be bad before you file, but once you file, that's when you see the monster really come out. And then they're going scorched earth on you for this. Now, compared to the psychopath narc, your very life could be in danger, because they have no problem physically hurting you, harming your pets, sexually abusing your kids. They have no problem with that. The only limits on them is what they feel they can get away with. And if you dare to try to break away, that's when you see the really dangerous aspects come out. I mean, I know someone that she had a 5-year period of fighting through the legal system and trying to protect her child, and her ex, twice, he had this like rotating door of girlfriends, and girlfriends came forward to the police because she heard conversations he was having with someone else of plotting how to off her. And so the girlfriend would go to the police, and twice she had to flee and go into hiding for a month at a time with the child. So that's what they're capable of, this sort of thing. It's the sociopath, psychopath, this category for narcissist. It's a game to them. You're the cat, or excuse me, they're the cat and you're the mouse. And like a cat will like bat it around until it dies. Not because it wants to eat the mouse for food. It just enjoys inflicting pain. The narcissist does. If they know that they're destroying you financially, they love it. They plot ways to do that. They plot ways to destroy your reputation, to turn people against you. In churches, these are the people that will cause church splits. And, they're horrible human beings. And really, you can't deal with them like you would a normal person. And, what clicks with my coaching clients as I'm working with them is to picture them as they're an alien being in a human skin suit. That's what you're up against,
Right.
So
that's a great way to visualize that. And so we're getting close to come to the end to this. So I want you to talk. I know just prior to coming onto the show, you were talking about your little course that you put together.
Yeah.
So kind of a little bit about this course. It sounds exciting.
Yes. This is a new course as of this recording, and it's the Make It Make Sense Masterclass. So I take this spectrum and I unpack it even deeper, and we walk through things, and I come at it from a biblical standpoint as well, and what to do, what not to do, things to think about. When is it resolvable? When is it not? Because it's really important, especially for those who do have Christian leanings and they're good-hearted people. They think if they were just to pray harder, if maybe I was just a better wife, if maybe I was kinder and more thoughtful or whatever, that maybe he or she, would have seen the light. Maybe things could have, if I would have just hung in there a little longer. So working through stuff like this helps you to see, you were dealing possibly with this type of category person, which means you can just take all that guilt you've been laying on yourself and take it off, because it doesn't make you more spiritual or noble to martyr yourself at the feet of a narcissist.
Right. In fact, it just gets you more beat up and in more of harm's way.
Right. They love that.
Right. So, and
Yeah.
Tina, I was so glad to connect with you. I've already sent someone your way, even just recently, because,
Yes.
when you're dealing with a category 3 or 4, especially narcissist, you really need Tina's services and what she does. She's the expert to know what kind of documentation you need, what you need to put in place to protect you and protect your kids. Because, otherwise, if you dive into this legal system, even with an attorney, that doesn't mean that the attorney understands what's going on and knows what to do. And you can just be, a category 3, category 4 narcissist, the legal system is their playground. They're getting supply from that. They love it. And if they've got any money to spare, then they're going to keep you tied up as many years of your life as they possibly can. So that's where, Tina, what you do is priceless for women and men.
Well, and thank you very much. And it's people like you, when we get to work together, where we can actually help these people come from a horrible life of depression and bleak. They don't see a future. I know both of us were in that place. I attempted suicide, and he thought it often that he wished he prayed for that. And so coming together with people like you make this work so special for me, because having you on as a guest, and I know I'm going to have you back for one of our live episodes so people can ask live questions to you. It's just so important so that people can get the help that they need to move on to their wonderful life.
Right. Yeah. What we do with people is really a compliment, because you're there with them in those darkest crisis moments. And it is game changing what you're able to do for people. Really, truly game changing. And where I come into the equation is once that part is done, then it's rebuilding your life. And where I like to work with people, and I work with primarily women. I have worked with men, but I tend to be one-on-one when I work with the men, only because my programs and the groups that I have are women in there. And my goal with women is to equip them with the tools so they know how to handle their heart rightly, to think about their thinking, to get all that turned back around, the housekeeping, to clean up on aisle 13 that you need to do after you come out of, years of dealing with a narcissist. But beyond that, the goal is not just to be who you were before the narcissist, because the fact of the matter is you won't be. There's been a lot of water under the bridge. You will never be that person again. Yeah. But that's not a bad thing.
They can be better.
Better. Exactly. So I want to see people be equipped with the tools for now and in the future, so they know how to do some of these things on their own, and that what they went through is a catalyst for growth.
Yes.
Because you never know. Again, from a Christian worldview, I look at this as the scripture that says God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. That means he brings good out of this. And that's how you win. You know, when
Yes.
you have success and peace and joy, and you are wiser and stronger and better equipped than you ever were before, and you're doing something that is making a difference, you reach this point in your life when you can, I know this sounds weird, but you can look back and say, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I wouldn't want to go through it ever again, but I'm grateful for who I am now, that I might
That's
not
what I
have been had it not been for what I went through.
Right. And that's what I tell people. I'm stronger now. My kids are
Mhm.
really strong, pretty
Yes.
doggone sound. But I would never go tell someone, hey, this is how you have 6 great, strong kids. And this is how you get to be a stronger person. Go
Yeah.
marry a narcissist for
Uh-huh.
however many years you can tolerate it, and then come out a stronger person, because it is, you see your life kind of disappear. I was asking God, like, why, God, why am I still here?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so I can
Yeah.
relate to, I'd say, everything you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with all of this, Annette, how
Uh-huh.
can people reach you? I know all of your contact information will be in the show notes below,
Mhm.
and all the contact information for your website and everything will be there. But go ahead and verbally tell us how we can get a hold of you.
Yes, you're welcome to just shoot me an email. That's fine. Sometimes people feel a little safer just sending an email, and you can just do hello@AnnetteChesney.com. That's fine. You can reach me that way. If you want to do this masterclass that I have set up like a course that is self-led, you can go in there and just do it on your own. It's completely complimentary. And that you can go to, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, AnnetteChesney.com/make-sense. Make
Very
dash.
good. Very, very good.
Mhm.
Very good. Awesome. And so what is your website called then?
It's AnnetteChesney.com.
Okay, AnnetteChesney.com.
Mhm.
So awesome, awesome. So so as we go through and wrap this all up, I will tell you that I'm a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in divorce and its complexities. I specialize in high conflict divorce, especially that with abuse from a narcissistic or toxic partner. Joe himself has experienced this abuse. And although I've had broken bones and stuff, there's a difference between the narcissistic abuse he received and what I received. But he's been through that. And if you would like to talk to either of us, you can send me an email at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. And my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. And I'm also on all the social medias. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok, and you can look for Coach Tina Huggins, and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. So you can reach me through all of those spots. And I know that Annette is also on most of all of those social medias, because that's where we originally connected.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
So,
LinkedIn. And by
Yes,
the way,
yes.
for those of you watching, definitely connect with LinkedIn, because with Tina on LinkedIn, because she's got some amazing posts that she puts out there. They're so good. You do a great job with that.
So if you are in a violent situation, if it's going on right now, please call 911. Get the police officers there and press charges. This is your key out. Press charges and keep those charges pressed, and make sure that you get a hold of a professional and help get you out of that situation so that you stay safe. And if you're in the UK, same thing, only that phone number there is 999. If you are in a domestic violent relationship, please call the domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And please like, comment, and share this information for somebody else to get the healing that they need to have. Thank you, Annette, for being on here. And I promise our viewers we're going to have her back for one of our lives so that you can have the opportunity to ask questions directly. Thank you. Do you have any last minute things?
Nope. It was very informative just to see it again. to reassure myself what I was dealing with.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, just to reassure to go, yep. So
We always run out of time. Well, thanks again, Annette. And
Thanks for
we
having
will
me.